The soil is drying up. My brothers are dying of hunger, and you talk about a strategic plan? The elderly farmer Amadou Diallo's voice echoed with anger in the crowded meeting hall. Ibrahim Traore calmly rose from his seat. A silence fell over the room filled with ministers and advisors as the tall soldier stood. You're right, Uncle Amadou. Plans on paper don't fill stomachs. Then he pushed aside the files on the table. Tomorrow at dawn, I'll be in your village. I want to see the real needs of our farmers. The advisors anxiously looked at each other. This wasn't in the presidential protocol. The defense minister leaned over and whispered in Traore's ear, Mr. President, your security cannot be guaranteed. Traore smiled. Our real security cannot be guaranteed when our people are hungry. As the first rays of light painted Burkina Faso's arid plains golden, Ibrahim Traore's small convoy was advancing toward Amadou Diallo's village, Kumbri. The security team around him nervously scanned the surroundings. The region was threatened not only by drought, but also by terrorist group activities. When they arrived at the village, they were met with an unexpected crowd. People had gathered not just from Kumbri, but from surrounding villages too. Old, young, women, men, all had heard that the president would visit their village. Some had found it hard to believe. They couldn't imagine a head of state coming to listen to them. Traore stepped out of the vehicle with a genuine smile on his face. With his red beret and simple military uniform, he stayed away from ostentation. Amadou Diallo, leaning on his walking stick, came forward and greeted Traore with a traditional salutation. Welcome to our village, President Traore. You kept your word. Traore shook the elderly farmer's hand. It's my duty to see and solve my people's problems, Uncle Amadou. Within minutes, Traore and his team began touring the village. The scene was bleak. Arid soil, cracked ponds, scrawny animals, and worst of all, faces bearing the marks of hunger. Many of the children showed signs of malnutrition. The situation is worse than I thought, Traore said to the Minister of Agriculture. The reports at the ministry don't fully reflect this. The reports are prepared with information from our officials who can't reach all regions due to security issues, Mr. President, the minister explained. Then we need more information, directly from the farmers. Traore sat under a tree in the village square and began listening to the people. As each person spoke, he nodded, asked questions, took notes. He didn't want to miss any detail. Our water wells have dried up, said a woman, rocking the child in her arms. We walk 5 kilometers every day to reach the nearest water source. Our seeds aren't productive, said another farmer. My father learned farming from his father, and he from his. But the soil isn't as fertile as it used to be. It's very difficult to reach the market. The roads aren't safe, added a young man. Even if we sell our products, we can't get a fair price. Traore listened to each one patiently. Then he stood up and looked at the villagers. Burkina Faso was once a self-sufficient country, he said, his voice strong and determined. During Thomas Sankara's time, hunger was unknown in these lands. Then the colonizers and their puppet governments ruined our agriculture. They made us dependent on imports. The villagers nodded. Sankara's name was still remembered with respect. From today, I'm initiating agricultural reform, Traore continued. We will use all resources, all efforts to solve this crisis. I promise you. While the villagers were somewhat hopeful with Traore's words, they hadn't completely abandoned their skepticism. Many promises had been made before, then forgotten. Well, how will you do this? Asked Amadou Diallo, interjecting between the speeches. It's easy to promise, hard to do. Traore smiled. You're right, Uncle Amadou. That's why I listened to you all before explaining my plan. I wanted to understand your real needs. Traore pulled out a small notebook from his pocket. Here's my plan. First, the water problem. there are underground water sources around your village. Hydrogeologists have confirmed this. We'll drill modern wells. Second, the seed problem. We'll combine your traditional seeds with modern science. We'll use seeds improved through natural methods, not genetically modified. Third, market access. We'll create secure transportation corridors, and the government will buy your products at a fair price. And finally, self-sufficient farms. Each village should be able to produce its own food and sell the surplus. The villagers listened carefully to Traoré's words. Some looked at each other with skeptical glances, but Traoré's simple, clear plan had instilled hope in many hearts. "How will you finance this, Mr. President?" asked a young man. "Our country is already in economic difficulty." Traoré's face grew serious. "We'll allocate 30% of our mining revenues to agricultural reform. We reject the conditions imposed on us by the West under the name of aid. We'll produce our own solutions with our own resources." The villagers applauded. Traoré continued walking among the people, answering more questions and seeing every corner. Before leaving the village as the sun was setting, he said one final word. "Don't forget my words. I'll return in 3 months. The first wells will have been drilled. The first road will have been secured. And in 6 months, the first harvest will be made. This is just the beginning." As the convoy was leaving the village, Amadou Diallo approached Traoré. "Be honest, President Traoré. Can you really keep these promises?" Traoré looked into the old farmer's eyes. "I'll work until my last breath, Uncle Amadou. And if I fail, then you can come and remove me from office." Amadou laughed. "I'm an old man, but my sons and daughters will be watching. If you don't keep your word, they'll come find you." 2 weeks later, Traoré pressed the button. Africa's self-sufficiency project was officially launched. Former colonial countries and international financial institutions criticized the project as unrealistic. "President Traoré is giving empty promises to his people," said a French diplomat. "Given the drought, terrorism, and lack of infrastructure, this project is doomed to fail." But Traoré paid no attention to the criticisms. The first step was to transfer some of the mining revenues to agricultural reform. This was a project financed with their own resources without taking foreign debt. The second step was the purchase of modern agricultural equipment. However, Western countries had imposed an embargo due to Traoré's independence policies. Traoré found the solution in the East. He bought equipment from countries like China, Russia, and India, but rejected their political conditions too. "We will not be anyone's satellite," Traoré said in the cabinet meeting. "Neither the West's nor the East's. We are Burkina Faso, and we will chart our own path." Within a month, the first water wells began to be drilled. The combination of modern technology and traditional knowledge was yielding efficient results. Local farmers were taking an active role in the project. Within 2 months, the first secure agricultural corridors were established. With the support of the army, measures were taken against attacks by terrorist groups. Farmers could safely transport their products to the market. Within 3 months, Traoré kept his word and returned to Kumbri village. The first modern well had been drilled in the village, and farmers had planted the first improved seeds. "There, Uncle Amadou," said Traoré to the elderly farmer. "I kept my word." Amadou was looking at the clear water flowing from the new well. "We're just at the beginning of the road, President Traoré. We need to see the actual crop." "You're right," said Traoré. "The hardest part starts now, but we'll succeed together." 4 months passed. The agricultural reform was experiencing various difficulties. In some regions, terrorist groups were trying to sabotage the project. In others, corruption and inefficiency problems had emerged. And worst of all, the drought was more severe than expected. Traoré frequently went into the field to check the situation. One day, while visiting a farm in the Gawa region, a young farmer woman, Mariam Zongo, stopped him. "Mr. President, I want to show you something," said Mariam, leading Traoré to her field. "The new system you gave us is working." Mariam's field was much greener than other fields in the region. The drip irrigation system was using every drop of water efficiently. The organic fertilizers mixed into the soil had increased productivity. "I taught these techniques to everyone in the village," Mariam said proudly. "At first, they didn't listen to me, but when they saw the results." Traoré noted Mariam's success and immediately formed a plan to use successful farmers as teachers. In each village, the most successful farmers would be selected and would train others. When 6 months was up, Traoré made his third visit to Kumbri village and was met with a promising scene. The arid lands had begun to transform into green fields. The first harvest was above expectations. "You were right, President Traoré," said Amadou as they walked through the fields. "Maybe you really can start a change." "Not me, Uncle Amadou," said Traoré. "Us, together." However, the success of the agricultural reform had caught the attention of some external powers. Burkina Faso becoming self-sufficient went against the interests of former colonial countries. An African country stopping food imports meant they would lose their markets. One morning, a report came to Traoré's office. The intelligence service reported that some foreign agents were trying to sabotage the agricultural projects. Seed warehouses had been damaged. Some wells had been sabotaged. "These attacks are a sign that we're successful," Traoré told the defense minister. "They can't intimidate us. Increase security and protect the projects." The same day, a delegation from the International Monetary Fund, IMF, came to meet with Traoré. The IMF representative spoke with a cold demeanor. "President Traoré, we see that you are not taking foreign debt to finance your agricultural reform. Does this mean you don't trust international financial institutions?" Traoré smiled. "It's not a matter of trust, sir. It's a matter of independence. We believe we can solve our own problems with our own resources." The IMF representative placed a file on the table. "We can offer you credit under more favorable terms. You can buy more equipment, more technology. And in return, some economic reforms, privatizing your gold mines, more integration into the free market economy." Traoré politely pushed the file back. "Thank you for your offer, but we will follow our own path." The IMF delegation left with discontent. Traoré's stance against the West's economic control was creating uneasiness in international financial circles. A year passed. Burkina Faso's agricultural reform continued to progress despite all difficulties. In many villages, water wells were drilled, modern agricultural techniques were taught, and production increased. In Kumbri village, when the second harvest season came, Amadou Diallo's field yielded a record crop. The old farmer said he could save money for his grandson's education for the first time. "My grandson will be a doctor," he said proudly. "Now I can imagine this." Traoré organized a national conference to evaluate the one-year results. The data was impressive. Food production had increased by 20%. Imports had decreased by 15%. Most importantly, the quality of life in rural areas had begun to rise. "This is just a beginning," said Traoré at the conference. "Our goal is to create a completely self-sufficient Burkina Faso within 5 years." On the last day of the conference, Traoré received a surprise guest, Niger's new president Mohamed Bazoum. Bazoum wanted to examine Traoré's agricultural model and implement it in his own country. "Africa's problem is dependence on foreign aid," said Bazoum in his private meeting with Traoré. "Your model shows us the way." Traoré put forward the idea of agricultural cooperation among African countries. "We are a family. We should share knowledge, technology, resources." The two presidents signed a protocol named Pan-African Agricultural Cooperation. This was a cooperation platform that other African countries could join too. At the closing of the conference, Traoré took the stage and gave a surprise speech. He broadcast his speech live to all villages via video conference. In the villages, people gathered around screens. "The future of Burkina Faso is in our fields," said Traoré. "Our ancestors left us fertile lands. Sankara showed us the path to independence. Now, it's our turn to carry this legacy forward." At the end of the speech, Traoré signed a document. "With this document, I make the Africa's Self-Sufficiency Project permanent. This project cannot be stopped or changed by any government. This is my promise to our people." In Kumbri village, Amadou Diallo and the villagers were watching the speech. The old farmer smiled with moist eyes. "Maybe change really is possible," he whispered. And in the fields, the first raindrops began to fall. After a long drought, finally rain was coming. The villagers saw this as a sign. Burkina Faso was advancing toward a new future. Traoré's agricultural reform was the beginning of a movement that would affect not just Burkina Faso, but all of Africa. Thomas Sankara's unfinished dream was being revived. "The day will come," said Traoré, watching the rain from the window in his office, "when Africa will feed its own people. And that day, we will truly be independent." If you've watched this far, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Leave your thoughts on the story in the comments and support me by liking the video.